Hello students, welcome to the MOOC course on Understanding Global Politics. Today's topic is Global Environment and Global Economy, evolution of the concept of environmental economics, sustainable development and environmental management. Human civilization is basically an interaction between the human beings and the nature. Indian civilization is considered to be an eco-friendly one as it has shown an awareness of environment from the beginning. In the Rig Veda, we have seen how the environment was valued at that point of time. Following the same tradition, in the Atharva Veda also, we have seen that the nature or environment was valued and that was obvious from that was obtained from different hymns. And in the Greek and Roman civilization also, the people of the then society, they used to value the environment by worshipping different deities who were actually the representatives of the nature and different planets. Now, environmental degradation actually started in the 18th century, basically with the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution that occurred first in Britain in the 18th century. After that, it rapidly spread all over the world. Now, for economic development of a country, industrial revolution is very necessary. But unplanned industrialization actually creates waste in the environment and also it degrades the environmental situation. As a result, basically unplanned industrialization is not expected. So, economic development without considering this environment will create a crisis in the human society. In this background, I will start explaining from the classical economists that how they have valued or whether they have actually valued or not the environment. Classical economics actually started from Adam Smith and it ends with John Stuart Mill. First, who is considered as the father of economics is Adam Smith, and he was a classical economist, and his famous theory was invisible hand, in which he explained that when an individual pursue his self-interest in a competitive market, in a framework of competitive market, he will obviously satisfy the interest of the other people. And he also identified that for many goods, it is not possible to reach an efficient outcome by only considering the market outcome. So, in that case, intervention from outside was necessary. And from Adam Smith to David Ricardo, whoever it is, in classical economists actually did not consider the environmental economics explicitly. That is because of two reasons. First of all is that at that point of time, industrialization and technological development had not reached to that point of time, point of level, so that it impact heavily or significantly on the society. On the other hand, social science did not reach to that level so that it considers environment in its domain. After Adam Smith, another economist who was famous for his theory of population is Thomas Robert Malthus. And in his theory of population, first time he mentioned that the population can grow in the long term only if agricultural output is developed or agricultural output is increased. Otherwise, population can't grow. And this may not be the environmental economics what we conceive in today's world, but it actually showed some sort of constraint on the environment that is imposed on our activities. In 1817, another book was published, The Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, that was by David Ricardo, in which he proposed another type of constraint, and that constraint is on land. Actually, in his theory of rent, David Ricardo have shown that land could be a constraint, or agricultural output could be a constraint, because according to him, whenever population increases, demand for agricultural output automatically increases. And when demand for agricultural output increases, it actually influences that the less fertile lands should be used along with the more fertile lands. And of course, while cultivating in the less fertile land, it will be more costly, and the produced good, which is produced from more fertile as well as less fertile lands, both are of the same quality, their price will be same. And as the price will be same, the produced goods price will be higher than the cost of the more fertile lands, and there will be a gap between the cost of more fertile lands and the price of the product, and this gap was actually the amount of rent. And in this way, actually, David Ricardo have shown that whenever population increases, demand for agricultural product increases, at the same time rent also increases. So it is actually creating a sort of constraint. And mention worthy another economist who is considered to be the last economist of classical school of economics, and he is John Stuart Mill. In his book Principles of Political Economy, he has shown that government does not have only one role to protect the citizens of the country and providing security to them. Along with that, those government of a country has all other functions also. According to John Stuart Mill, actually government by various kinds of natural resources are natural inheritance of the human being, and those natural inheritance should not be left for common enjoyment. Some government intervention should be there. This is actually, Mill was actually concerned about the public good nature of the environment. However, he did not mention any kind of action from the part of the government to be implemented at that point of time. So we have seen that classical economists were more or less aware that that environment will have some value, and degradation of it will of course impact on us. However, they did not mention any kind of actions from the part of the government. Now, another economist who is mentioned worthy is Pigou. And first of all, one of the most important contribution from the part of the marginalist economist is that general equilibrium theory by Walras. At the same time, another economist who invented the concept of partial equilibrium, and the most significant concept of that partial equilibrium analysis was externality. And this externality have some impact on environmental economics, and another economist, Pigou, which I have already mentioned, has significant contribution on this externality, as he used this externality concept in the case of consumption and production. Pigou have shown that how efficient policy or could improve the resource allocation in an economy. He also measured the environmental damage, and his theory is still continuing in modern environmental economics, and it was followed by many economists later. The origin of environmental economics started in 1950s with the establishment of RFF, that means Resource for the Future, in Washington DC, and its function was to actually analyze or review the supply of resources in the post-World War period. But the environmental economics truly came into the age with the 1960s, with the publication of Russell Carson's Silent Spring in 1962. In his book, he actually mentioned how agrochemicals could be detrimental to the human society. And now we know that externality has a very much impact on environmental economics with the work of Pigou, which I have already mentioned. And in that externality framework, the pollution damage is neatly fitted. When a polluter creates some pollution, it did not pay any kind of tax for that. And according to cause, polluters actually, the market outcomes actually fail to measure the well-being efficiently. So for that, some sort of property rights could improve the efficiency of the outcome. So according to Coase, this property right could be imposed in two ways. Firstly, a tax or some sort of burden could be imposed on the polluters, so they reduce creating pollution. On the other hand, sometimes the sufferer could compensate, or sufferer could pay the polluters for not polluting. And in the 19th century, another work by Dufy was established that the policies could be evaluated in terms of cost and benefits, and cost and benefit can be measured in terms of willingness to pay. In this context, application of Calder and Hicks's compensator criteria is also justified on the ground that whenever gainers compensate the losers actually benefited. At the same time, the gainers would still have some net benefit. This actually have a link with the theory of Pareto optimality. The idea that a natural resource had some optimum level of use has been first introduced by Gray in the 20th century and later by Hotelling. And initially, this theory was confined in natural economics, but later it was extended to environmental economics. In 1973, the oil crisis of the OECD country actually increased the price of oil. As a result of that, human society actually realized that it is very difficult to be dependent on oil-based resources. And from the work of Gordon, we can understand how renewable resources can be used optimally. His work later was extended by Hardin in his paper, The Tragedy of Commons. Another relevant literature which is related to the birth of environmental economics is related to ecological limit of economic activity. Actually, in 1960s, the environmental economists they were bothered about the lifestyle of the human being. If those lifestyle was actually detrimental to the environment, that should be changed or that should be stopped. In famous writing by Boldings, in his book Spaceship Earth, he mentioned that Earth is like a spaceship with limited supply of energy, which could be renewed only by solar energy. At the same time, he considered Earth as a supply of water and other natural resources which could be sustainably or efficiently used if those resources are reused and recycled. His essay laid the foundation for today's sustainable society, which operates with limited supply of resources and energy. Now, the breakthrough came in the research of environmental economics with the Earth Summit of 1992, which held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. This summit actually gathered politicians, political leaders, social scientists, different leaders of NGOs and other medias of 179 countries in a place to discuss the impact of economic activity on the environment. And they have shown how economy, society and environment, these three sectors are interlinked, and activities in one sector is detrimental to other sectors or beneficial to other sectors. And the primary objective of that summit was for international action on environmental and developmental issues. The Earth Summit concluded that sustainable development is the only way to reach or to sustain in this changing world, and the summit has shown that recognize the necessity of integration of economic, social and environmental activities. After the Earth Summit of 1992, sustainable development became the central notion of any kind of economic policy. The term sustainable development was coined by International Union for Conservation of Nature. And before the publication of Brundtland report in 1987, the term was not actually popular, but after its publication, the term became popular. And there are many definitions of this term sustainable development. And among them, the most popular one was given by the Brundtland Committee in 1987, according to which sustainable development is the development of the present generation without compromising the need of the future generations. In this definition, there are two key concepts. First is the concept of needs, indicates the essential needs of the world's poor to which priority should be given, and the second was the idea of limitations imposed by the state of technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. Now in Rio Summit actually gave the impetus to measure this sustainable development in terms of some indicators, and those indicators should give us some first-hand idea about the sustainability, and that for that purpose they suggested for measuring GNP or revise the measure of GNP. Previously, the GNP measure, actually GNP means gross national product, that did not consider the environment at all. And it is very simple to modify the gross national product by incorporating environmental components. And compared to GNP, NNP or net national product is a much better measure because it leaves the capital depreciation, which did not have any kind of well-being impact. So we will now see how this green NNP or NNP by incorporating environmental components can be measured. Green NNP is basically GNP minus DM, DN, DH and DS. In each case, D represent depreciation and subscripts M, N, H and S refer to man-made, natural, human and social capital. Now, GNP is composed of consumption and investment. Most of us know that GNP is equal to consumption plus investment. Now, this investment is basically gross investment, and from gross investment, if we deduct man-made depreciation, we get net investment. So, we can write the equation like NNP equal to C plus I net, where I net means net investment minus DN, DH and minus DS. Now, the sign, positive of this DN, DH and DS, these three depreciation components could be positive or negative. First of all, DN, that actually consists of environmental commodities and minus its depreciation rate. And in general, in case of exhaustible resources, DN is positive, and this DH, that means depreciation of human capital, is generally negative, because whenever inventions of technology and skills are there, human skill actually improves. And DS, that also could be positive or negative. Now, case is economic rent, which is the difference between price and marginal cost. As the depreciation asset is not being marketed, it is very difficult to measure the individual's willingness to pay for those component or for the environmental commodity. And in recent years, most of the researches are going on how to value these environmental commodities, as they are not being marketed. Now, in 2015, the Earth Summit, actually 17 goals are set by the United Nations General Assembly to be achieved by the year 2030. And these goals are: first goal is no poverty, second one is zero hunger, third one is good health and well-being, fourth one is quality education, fifth is gender equality, sixth is concerned with clean water and sanitation. Goal 7 is affordable and clean energy, that means to provide the human society with affordable and clean energy. Goal 8 is decent work and economic growth. Goal 9 is industry, innovation and infrastructure, that means development of this industry and innovation. And the 10th goal is reduced inequality, which is necessary for achieving sustainable development. Now, goal number 11 is sustainable cities and communities. We can see in recent years how cities are changing. Basically, these changes are occurring to attain sustainable cities and communities, attain this goal actually. And the 12th goal is responsible production and consumption. Responsible production and consumption means that production and consumption activities should consider environmental degradation while producing and consuming. And the 13th goal is climate action. Climate action for the improvement of our climate, or at least not deteriorate the present situation. And the 14th goal is concerned with life below the water. That is also necessary for achieving sustainable development. 15th goal is life on land. 16th goal is peace, justice and strong institutions, which is very much necessary for a sustainable society. And the 17th and the last goal, that means the last goal, is partnership for goals. Now I will discuss environmental management. as far we have came to know that environmental challenge has become one of the most or one of the central issue of the recent years, and a planned environmental management system should be executed to attain sustainable development. As we know that industrialization is prerequisite for economic development of a country. At the same time, we also know that this industrialization creates waste in the environment. So for controlling or for maintaining a balance, we have to adopt some environmental management system. And this environmental management is basically a process that an individual or a company or an industry they undertakes to regulate and protect the health of the nature. Now, this environmental management does not actually manage the environment itself, but it takes steps and at the same time it promotes behavior which actually cares about the environment. Now, this environmental management have some basic functions. These functions are goal setting, organizing and planning of environmental management, support of decision making, information management, environmental management programs, piloting, implementation and control, communication, internal and external auditing, etc. These functions should be there for a good environmental management system. Now, the present state of economic development is such that this environmental management system should broaden its domain. And nowadays, there are many technologies available for improving the production technology, at the same time reducing carbon emissions in the economy. But for implementing this management system, a proper accounting and reporting system should be there, so that these available technologies are used fruitfully. Now, through this environmental management system, a company can enjoy the following benefits which I will mention now. First is that it is helpful in discharging organizational accountability and increasing transparency. Second is that it improves performances through better management of environmental cost and thus benefits the natural and human environments. It forces the corporate sector to fulfill their commitments towards introduction and change towards protecting the environment and thus appears to be responsive to new factors. Firms giving importance to the ecological aspects are basically getting popular, especially in the Western world. It reflects unsound production and consumption patterns, misuse and scanty use of resources and assets like water should be stopped immediately. And the fifth one is that it improves the overall competitiveness of a farm. Now I will conclude. From the entire discussion, we came to know that environment is an integral part of human life. And from the time of industrialization during 18th century, people started to use environment and environmental benefits. They started to enjoy those benefits at their whim. As a result of that, wastes are started creating in the environment. And environmental economics actually concerned with the impact of economic activities on the environment, and there is another branch of that is the resource economics, which is actually which shows us that how efficiently we can use environmental resources. Now, in this entire discussion, we have started with the classical economists' perception about the environment. Then we discussed how the term environmental economics that evolved. Actually, first it was evolved during 1960s. However, it was popularized in the 90s after the Rio summit. And the summit or Earth Summit or Rio Summit, whatever we say, it actually promotes sustainable development. Sustainable development means development of the present by keeping in mind the future generations. And this sustainable development is achievable only by executing proper environmental management system.